Thank you. I'm sure you enjoyed that lovely tune. I was actually dancing behind the scene because it was very pleasant. So the yes, it is still Saturday special, and we are still taking a look at agriculture, food sufficiency, the threat of famine, and we've heard from so-called experts, the Commissioner for Agriculture. But now, I want to talk to people who are on the field, the people that see it as it is happening. These are the agricultural entrepreneurs, as it were. We have Mr. Adedamola Are, who is a farmer and agricultural entrepreneur. Is the general manager of Are Farms here in Ibadan. Good morning, sir. And we also have another agricultural entrepreneur. We have Mr. Oladipo Oke, who is the CEO, that's the Chief Executive Officer of Oladipo Farms in Irua. Thank you for being here as well.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you all so much for being here. Let me start off with Mr. Are. Mr. Are, we are talking food sufficiency and the threat of famine. How big is this threat of famine in Nigeria today, in your opinion?
In my opinion, it's a big threat for a variety of reasons. Our current population is only going to continue to grow at a very rapid rate. We have become a consumer culture where we consume everything but produce insufficient quantities. And the reality is, with the current situation in the country, we're not producing enough to meet the demands of our people. And those who are working on large-scale projects, particularly some rice developers, potato developers, will obviously be enticed by foreign exchange to export what they have. So not everything that's produced currently and in future will make it into the Nigerian market. Okay. And the population, at some point, by the levels of consumerism that we have, will not be met by the production. So it is a very real threat.
Mr. Okay, if we have this threat and we have agricultural entrepreneurs like you, what stops us from being able to expand our capacity in terms of production in order to meet our own needs before we even talk about exports?
Well, there are quite a number of things that limit production here. But majorly one thing I will single out first is infrastructure and the enabling environment. A lot of people are actually there. They are farming, they are doing it, but they would have done more if they had the means or if the infrastructure to do so were there. There's a limit to what you can do by yourself. You can't, personally, I can't weed 1 acre of land by myself. I can't do it. I need help. I need some people to come in. I need mechanization. And it's the same thing across board for a lot of other farmers. So when they have the idea that this is what they want to do, but the infrastructure, the things to support them to do this is not there, then the idea is just there. The wish is just there. So the environment has to be conducive for them to bring expression to these things that they want to do.
Mr. Are, you were just nodding your head when Mr. Oke was talking. In your experience, since both of you, you are on ground. You know exactly what's going on where food production is concerned. Where does the shoe pinch particularly for you?
Well, if you farm the way I do, my goal was to produce trees that take about 6 years to mature. Citrus and, of course, mangoes. What I found out is if the cash flow doesn't come in the first 5-6 years, you incur a lot of overhead. Overhead to clear the land, as he rightfully said, overhead to maintain the ramp-up years, as you would call it. And for one person or one business to sustain that is very expensive. And the average person cannot sustain that. Now, in addition to what he said, the issue of powering your water supply, well, the issue of even getting your water supply by building your own boreholes and then transferring water, the issue of getting power by portable generators or generators to move and pump that water and put it where you need to put the water, That's a problem, and it's a challenge, and it's very expensive. I mean, then you talk about diesel.
We're still talking infrastructure.
So you're still talking infrastructure and the fact that it's not an enabling environment. Before you even get to crop variety, poor yield from the lack of the right crop variety, we could get into all that. But that's definitely an infrastructural problem, is the genesis of why a yield will not meet the levels it should internationally.
When we talk about infrastructure, it's quite ironical that we, over time, hear governments roll out different schemes in terms of finance, loans. You could approach banks to get loans and all of that. What is the missing link between when some of these policies are rolled out and farmers themselves getting the dividends of some of these policies? Mr. Okay.
The challenge is consistency. There is no government that will continue forever, but is the government coming in willing to continue where the last one stopped? That's the first thing. A government can start up something, and when another one comes in, they push it aside. Then secondly, a lot of times we see that there is a challenge of implementation. We are very good on paper, very good. But a lot of time when it comes to bringing that paper to life, there's a big problem. So a lot of these policies, actually, you hear them and they sound good, but when you get to the people that really are to benefit from them, you see a lot of flaws in the implementation.
For instance?
For instance, if you look at, there was one that the past administration did, and that's the GES, the Growth Enhancement Scheme. They were to give a fertilizer, you buy one, you get one free. That was the principle. But you see that, yeah, it worked to a certain extent, but there were some bottlenecks. And some farmers could not access that, even though the things had been made due to some bottlenecks that were on ground. Then secondly, take a farmer that has 4 hectares. Let's visit 2 hectares. There's nothing 2 bags of fertilizer will do. And they said, well, really, it's like a poverty alleviation stop. Fine. But what of those farmers that really want to make it commercial? So a lot of times we see policies focusing on one part, neglecting other parts. We've not seen one that will really address the thing holistically. It's a pocket attacking different sections, not really looking at it wholly and then with a long-term view.
Mr. Are, you know, in addition to what he has said, I would want you to build on that from your experience as to, you know, why we have all of these issues happen and it doesn't seem to have the desired impact.
Well, as he rightfully said, the genesis of that is simple. If you have continuous change in governments, you know, we've heard of, to give an example, we've had several in this western region, IART, NIHORT, NCRI, IITA, Cocoa Research Institute, which of course my father worked for when I was a kid. You would expect that with all these entities, at least from the last 40, 50 years, that by now we'd be in a situation where when a government makes a plan and involves these agencies, somewhere in there you should have a concrete roadmap. And he said, a holistic approach. What appears to happen in every regime, whether at the federal level or the state level, is a plan that's important to that regime, not necessarily a holistic approach. And until that happens, whoever comes in will create a program that they want to put their footprint on.
I hear you say this, but on the other hand, one wonders how much input, you know, do farmers have before these policies are rolled out? Is it a lack of willingness on the part of the farmers, or is it the government that just does not expand, you know, those resource people they sit down to talk with? What's going on there?
Well, I can't speak for all farmers, but I can only speak for the present day. I can't go back in time, but I have never really been privy to any forums where anybody has asked for my input. I'm not sure about my counterpart here, but I have never heard. No, I have not.
Okay.
No, I have not.
So you're saying when farmers do not have a say into some of the into what goes into some of these policies, to implement some of those policies might be a bit difficult.
Definitely.
We also have to talk about the fact that down the line of production, there are concerns as to the quality of our products. The both of you are agricultural entrepreneurs. Let's hear from you, Mr. Oke. What is happening? We hear that some of our products are being rejected at international markets for being substandard. In some cases, that we use too much chemicals for some of these things. What's happening?
You know, I would like to kick off from a point you raised, and that's talking about our research institute. You know, when you talk of these standards, where those standards actually get set are from the research institutes. They are the ones that know, okay, this is the quantity of this chemical that must be in this, that must be in this. If it exceeds this, it's dangerous, and things like that. But, you know, he was saying something about this research institute that he has not yet seen any. I believe is one of the challenges of our agriculture. There's a disconnect between research and practice, and the gap is wide. There's actually something going on in the research, there's something else going on the field. And if this gap is not bridged, the challenge will persist. For example, you see a lot of research being rolled out, but the people that will benefit from that research know nothing about it. And usually, when government wants to formulate policies, they will go to these research centers. It's difficult for them to approach the farmers because they are scattered. You can't just, but they know, okay, when we get to this research center, we get what we need. With the belief that these ones too are in touch with the farmers, and which usually is not the case.
But there shouldn't the ADPs bridge this gap that you have talked about? What's happening there?
Ideally, they should, but our extension is challenged. There's a big challenge with extension. I, for one, am yet to meet one extension officer on the field. I can't talk of any other person. I, personally, I don't know whether he has seen. I'm yet to meet one extension officer personally on the field. So there's that big gap. So something is going on, and something is going on somewhere else, but the two need to synergize to bring a solution. And until that happens, they will go different ways, and there won't be a solution.
Mr. Are, coming to you now, I want to stay with agricultural extension now, because it seems that is very key. You know, the extension officers, you say you have never seen anyone. You know, it's coming as some big, revelation, as it were. When it comes to extension services, what exactly would you want to see such that you feel, okay, this would actually plug some of these loopholes that we've identified this morning?
Thank you very much. Definitely support. You know, part of the reason these crops, as you mentioned, are substandard or rejected is because we as farmers are trying to produce something that people can consume safely. But we also have limited education on the application of herbicides, the application of pesticides. And if we use things in the wrong dosage, it's no different from a doctor using the wrong amount of anything on a patient. So the end product cannot be safe, or maybe our yield could have been better if we were using the right variety of the seeds to begin with. You know, there have been cases where we've taken our products to the international market with palm, whether it was oil palm, whether it was the processing of palm, oil palm. And if you recall, we had, at least when I was a young man, the Nigerian Institute for Oil Palm Research. And I remember at some point in time, in the old Bendel state, the Malaysians, Indonesians came out here to study what we were doing. And it's interesting that 40 years later, their yield on the international market is about 6 times what we yield. So it's this access to information from the crop standpoint, from the seed standpoint, from the use of herbicide, the use of pesticide, the use of all these things that go into the final end product that you'd want to walk hand in hand with an extension officer, because we're not experts. We are just in need of support, as with many other farmers, to increase yield.
So it would really enhance what you're doing, you say?
Well, it's a win-win. It will enhance what we're doing, it will increase production, and it will reduce the price to the end user. So it's a win for everybody.
Okay, the big concern for a lot of people is, if we're talking about farmers now, the fact that farmers, we have this aging population of farmers now. A lot of them have been in this business for years, and that in the next 10, 20 years, if we have some of them begin to leave the stage, we do not have enough young ones who fill that space. From your experience, Mr. Oki, what would you say about the involvement now of youths to plug this gap?
Well, you know, there's a way this aging population did agriculture. There's a way youths of today have seen agriculture done. None of them wants to do it like the aging population. So if the only option you are giving them is to do it like the aging population, a lot of them will draw back. So there must be a conscious effort to change the way we do agriculture too. If not, a lot of people will not pick up that challenge. My grandfather was a farmer. I'd followed him to the farm a couple of times. I know how long he spent to weed, to hoe, to do that. I'm not willing to do that. I'm not, to be sincere with you. A lot of people are not willing to. No, it's not that I'm not willing to work, but if I do that, there's a limit to what I can produce. It's not matching the vision I have for myself. So a lot of youths too are willing to take up that challenge, but they are not willing to go that whole route. So if the government or the situation, don't let me just put it on the government, changes such that they can do it in an improved way,